The following program, Live and Learn, is made possible by Aging Partners. Find out more on their website.
Hi everybody, on today's segment of Live and Learn, we're going to be talking about the centennial of Memorial Stadium at the University of Nebraska. Stay tuned, it's really fun.
Hi everyone, I'm Julie Masters and welcome to Live and Learn. Aiding people at their most vulnerable moments is a gift few possess. For those who have this gift though, their efforts are life-changing. Joining me today is Dr. Mark Gilbert, an internationally known artist and award-winning faculty member from the University of Nebraska, Omaha. Stay tuned.
Hello everyone and welcome to Live and Learn. I am your host, Shari Veil. We have a very special guest for you today to come in and talk about AI, or artificial intelligence, and how it is being used in communication. It's the Dean of the College of Journalism and Mass Communications, Dr. Shari Veil. It is fascinating. Don't go away.
This and more on today's Live and Learn.
Hi everybody, welcome to Live and Learn. My name's Kim Hachiya. Hey, big shout out to Aging Partners and LNKTV for producing the show. I think it's going to be a really fun show today. A lot of people know that this is the 100th anniversary year for Memorial Stadium. In fact, we're taping this on October 20th and the stadium is going to be formally celebrated at the game tomorrow. I'm not sure when this is going to air, probably in November, possibly December, or it lives forever on YouTube, but we're going to be talking about the stadium today, and I'm going to be talking with two of my good friends, Logan-Peters from the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. She's retired architectural historian, and Mary Ellen Ducey, who is currently the Director of Special Collections and Archives for the University Libraries. And we're going to go through a whole bunch of really cool slides that Mary Ellen has done a lot of heavy lifting on, finding slides in the university's archives and historical things down in the basement of the library. So welcome to the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
It's exciting. And
Fun to be here.
Yeah, and I know there's been a lot of publicity about the 100th anniversary of the stadium, but it's kind of deserved, I think. It's kind of an old, they call it the old barn or the old gray lady, and I think I started going to games in the 60s, and the stadium is very familiar to me, and probably to a lot of people from Lincoln or from Nebraska, it's a very familiar building. You know, I've been to games there. I haven't been to concerts, but I've been to commencements there.
Yeah.
I've finished Lincoln half marathons in the stadium, which was a unique experience. So I think it's time that on the show that we spend a few minutes just talking about the stadium and what it means and everything. And I think we'll just kind of roll through some slides and you guys can chat about them and we'll talk about what we're seeing here. So let's roll slides. So what is this, Mary Ellen?
Well, this is a PDF copy of the Daily Nebraskan from the dedication of the stadium. So this would have been about 1923 in October. It's nice because we have the Daily Nebraskan digitized so we can get access to these materials, but it's a fun headline and illustration of the homecoming game.
Right.
And it's great art.
Yeah.
I love the way it's rendered. You know, architectural renderings are sort of interesting to people, and that's from a neat angle and great lettering, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Really good resource too for information when we're looking at the history too, because it talks about who's going to be there, who's going to talk, what the students are doing, some of the events that surround the whole experience. So it's a nice start.
So this is not the stadium. This is what?
This is Old Nebraska Field, which was the second field, and it was moved across T Street in 1908, and it was actually. It had grandstands on the north and south, but it ran east to west, which is kind of no longer how you build a stadium because of winds and things like that. But it was maintained, you know, it had grass and stripes and things. The first field was just a beaten down mud hole that was very, very hard and didn't have any turf and was bad to play on.
Mm-hmm. This is another example of that stadium.
This is an interesting start of a picture because it's a picture that's very wide, maybe about 18, 24 inches wide. So we when we scanned it, we had to break it up into 3 pieces. We might have other options nowadays, but this is a really good set of images coming up that you can really see how people were really eager to see the games. We get a lot of stories about students climbing trees, and you can definitely see this here way in the background if you scan in closer. A lot of people probably providing access to those homes around the stadium.
The girls section.
Yeah, this is great, yeah. There's a really interesting story about the women and girls section. Well, not specifically the section, but I love talking about the Women's Athletic Association with this picture, because they, in 1925, they had the concessions contract, and they would sell peanuts and candy bars and apples, and they kept that till about 1953 when the N Club took over. So.
What I like about that picture is it says Ames, which would have been Iowa State.
Right.
So we couldn't even give them their proper name. We just called them Ames.
It was so many more letters in Iowa
Right.
State.
Yeah, that's true. This is what, the ground, they're preparing the ground for the new stadium.
Yeah. I think the groundbreaking, didn't it happen in April of 23?
Yes, and they used horses.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's probably maybe from that day.
Yeah.
I know we have some numbers. I think there was 16,000 tons of concrete.
It's an enormous
600
amount
like pounds of steel, something like that, and then they had to move like thousands and thousands of feet of dirt to just get started.
and there were over 2 million feet of boards.
Wow.
That lumber. All of that was poured in place, and they had to create those forms with that lumber.
I sort of like the gentleman in the sort of jodhpurs or whatever who's using the little
He's a surveyor.
surveyor. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all those wires and everything. It's pretty cool.
And remarkably, they did it all in 89 days or something like that,
Jeez.
pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go to the next slide.
So this is a formal dedication, right? So this would have been, I think, October 23, 1923.
October
or
13th, I
October
believe.
13th.
Yeah.
Several threes in there, but
Yeah.
so they would have been raising the flag here, a military band. There was a 6-gun salute, and then a couple of presentations by administration. I think a chancellor, and then there was somebody else. Kay.
It was
there?
Richards, Charles Richards, who was a former dean of engineering who had gone on to become chancellor at Lehigh University. He was an engineer, but he was instrumental in getting Nebraska Field built and had been head of the athletic committee in those early years, turn of the century years. So they brought him back to make a speech.
I like this picture because I really like the N flag. I sort of wish we still had that
That's
N
kind of
flag.
a neat
It's kind
flag,
of cool.
isn't
I
it?
don't,
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that flag, when it went away, but it's cool.
And you can tell the balcony is still
Yeah.
under construction in these pictures. So they were sort of pushing it. They were determined to use the field
Right.
that fall, even though it was really not complete.
What I like about this picture, there's a couple things. In the back, on the left side, you can see the building says Hinkle and Joyce Hardware, which is, I think that building still exists downtown maybe. And then on the other side, by the very early version of Husker Vision, called that scoreboard.
Very
if you
early.
look near the back of the sign, it's very hard to see. You can see the letters and the numbers that they would have used to hand put up the scores. So it's kind of like how I think they still do that at Wrigley Field maybe, or maybe at
With
Boston.
the long pole.
Yeah, I think it's very fun. But you can also see the track. They built a track that you could still see remnants of in the stadium when you're there. And it's kind of an interesting picture. Yeah.
Chancellor Avery in the process of being seated.
Yes, I know, it's kind of a
Kind of an awkward shot of him.
And then this would be the crowd.
Yeah.
And you can still see the, the scaffolding for the east, I guess it's the east balcony. I don't know.
Probably.
One of the
I always
balconies.
assume it is because my
Yeah.
seats are there.
Same. Although I have sat in every single seat.
I do think, though, that the dedication festivities were oriented to the east, to the east stands, based on the other photos.
I think this image is from the first game, which would have been October 13th, 1923. Nebraska beat Oklahoma 24-0.
Okay, there we go. That's
Yay.
the right day.
Yay. Sorry, Sooner fans.
I wonder if they tore down that goalpost.
Oh, I hope so.
It wouldn't have taken more than 3 or 4 people.
I know.
Right.
It's pretty rickety looking. And then this photo said it was made on November 1st, 1924. So this was a year later, and Nebraska beat Missouri 14-6. So you can see the stadium is more complete.
Yep. The balcony is completely finished and has some people in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this was also, I think, maybe it's the next image, or this image, that was Tassels Day. And so Tassels, I don't know if they still exist, but Tassels was the men's pep club, and Corn Cobs was the women's pep club, which maybe shows that our ag roots were kind of backwards, because Tassels would actually be the male part of the plant, and cobs would be the female part of the plant. But
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
Huh.
yeah.
I'd never thought that through, but
This-
interesting.
This photo I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
liked.
I
I
love
just
that.
liked because it just shows the fans.
Sure. It's interesting because mostly tassels come with fabric and all those kind of questions, not the plant. This is
Yeah.
great, Kim.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that enlightenment. I love it.
So we don't know who this guy is. He just looks like a happy guy, and
Yeah.
you could kind of tell the age of this photo because of the hats that the women are wearing. So.
He could be the governor for all we know.
Oh yeah, no idea. So we're going to take like a really quick break and regroup, and we're going to come back in a couple minutes. So stay with us because we're having a great talk about Memorial Stadium.
Aging Partners has relocated to Victory Park, 600 South 70th Street, just east of the old VA hospital. Follow the signs around the south part of the building complex and enter under the Aging Partners sign on the east side of the facility. The new fitness center is equipped with state-of-the-art cardio and fitness equipment. Caseworkers and resource specialists are available to assist you with a variety of aging issues. Enjoy a hot lunchtime meal and engage with others in a variety of activities. Aging Partners, now at Victory Park.
Hi everybody, welcome back. Hey, we're in the second part of our series, or our segment on Husker Stadium and the 100th anniversary, which we're celebrating this week. So we're going to roll some more slides. I'm here with Mary Ellen Ducey and Kay Logan-Peters, and we're going to be talking about Husker Stadium. So this is what the clamshell entrance is. That's what I've always thought of it as, but
It's kind of, like half of a vault,
yeah.
I guess, architecturally.
You can't technically see this now when you go to the stadium because of the exterior of the East Stadium addition, or whatever they call it. But you can still see it on the inside, and I've always thought it was very beautiful and interesting.
Well, if you go in those gates, you walk right under that,
Right.
and it is very pretty.
I think it's interesting how really magnificent it looks in regard to some of those features, because I know they had big plans for colonnades and rotundas and huge atriums, and that kind of went away with, funding and resources when they were building, but it still really shows some magnificence there. So
I know that the Ohio State University also has an entrance like that on their stadium, because I was there several years ago and we drove by and I was like, oh, we have that too. So
Ohio State Stadium really was kind of a model for a lot of these stadiums, and there was that big stadium building boom in the early 20s. But Ohio State's is just a year older than ours.
well, I know University of Kansas is celebrating their anniversary
They
this
were 2
year.
years ahead, but their
Yeah.
stadium is pretty simple.
Yeah.
Ohio State's was over $1 million. It was the Cadillac of stadiums, and I think our original goal was to raise $1 million, and they couldn't quite do that.
And I know that there was a lot of issues because they were worried that teams wouldn't come and compete with us or compete in Nebraska because we didn't have the facilities. So that
Yeah,
Cadillac idea is probably pretty important for
And
us.
Nebraska Field was getting obsolete. There wasn't enough seating. It seated about 10,000, and the stadium, even the reduced plan was 31,000.
Yeah.
But Ohio State had over 60,000. They just had a lot more people to donate. And it's a bigger
Well, and I
school.
think University of Illinois Stadium, which is a little bit different, but it was built about the same time as was Soldier Field. A lot of them were built, I guess, as memorials to World War I.
Most of them.
Yeah.
Actually, I read not long ago there were 26 stadiums memorial stadiums being built in the early 20s, 26 different schools.
Wow.
That's a pretty impressive number.
That is.
You know, between maybe 1920 and 1925 or 28 or something like that. Michigan is 27, I think. So there were a lot of these going up at that time. And a lot of them still around.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
There's a good anecdote about Dusty Rhodes, which is a perfect nickname, Dusty, and with the last name Rhodes.
Yeah.
But he was elected as the coach, the student coach for the team in 1918, in the spring or something like that. And then in October of 1918 is when he was killed in battle in France. And so then right, like you say, with all these buildings and memorials and stadiums, it was around in 1919 when the N Club at the time said, okay, let's do a memorial and memorialize Dusty. But then all the other, men and who had gone to the war, faculty, students, all those, they also memorialized them as well.
And I know since then they have increased the number of memorialization. So it's also World War II now, and the Korean and Vietnam and
kind of broadened the definition.
Middle Eastern, So
we had a building that memorialized the Spanish-American War and the Civil War, and then when they tore it down, then the stadium memorial was enlarged, I think.
So let's roll slides again. So here we are, the East Stadium. You can still see the flagpoles, although they may have been moved.
It's probably a different pole, but
yes, hopefully. And so this, according to my notes, is the Northwest Tower. On those corners, they have inscriptions that were written by Hartley Burr Alexander, and this one says, "Courage, generosity, fairness, honor, and these are the true awards of manly sport." And so the other tower southeast is in commemoration of the men of Nebraska who served and fell in the nation's wars. The southwest is not the victory but the action, not the goal but the game, in the deed the glory. And the northeast is their lives they held, their country's trust, they kept its faith, they died their heroes. So those are evocative.
He was an impressive man, and he was working on the Capitol when he had been working on the Capitol for about a year with Goodhue, the architect, and when the stadium committee got rolling, they thought he works here, he could help us, and they recruited him to do those inscriptions. They add a lot of meaning to the stadium, I think.
Well, I think particularly the in the deed the glory thing, the university has very much embraced that.
Yeah.
And
well, it's emotionally, I
mean, really
provocative.
Not the victory, but the action, and the goal, but the game.
Well, it'd be nice if we always kept that in mind.
I know. I even have that memorized. So who knew? So let's go back to slides, and we think this is the West Stadium because there's a press box there.
Yeah.
So that's.
And they would stand on top of that thing with their cameras.
Oh my goodness!
We have a photo of that. I think I've seen it in your collection.
Well, and then you can see in the lower right-hand side of the picture that there's like a little garage door and some other things that got you into the concourse area and everything. So, so I guess they were planning ahead. There were also those little doors on the side I just noticed that were apparently concourse. I think if you're in there, you can kind of tell that's going on.
I think at this point they were still hoping they could complete the oval.
Complete the bowl.
Yeah. And then eventually other things happened there, as we know.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So this is, again, a full house. Apparently this is from 1934.
The fedoras, look at that.
But look how dressed up everybody is. I mean, now we sort of, sweatshirts and puffers, but, I remember my grandmother going to the game, though, wearing her
pumps and hose.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah, so, and the hats.
Right.
The lady is, shielding her face from the, I also remember, those stair step things on the side. Do you remember when that one cop used to jump up and down, jump those steps? Wow.
No.
Oh, God, I remember that. Going to games.
I do not remember that. That's
so
terrifying.
This picture is apparently, I don't know.
Would this be facing north?
Yes.
Yes. So you can see the 10th Street Viaduct.
And the knothole.
The knothole, Hinkle and Joyce. This would have been sometime in the 30s probably. There's not, no field house yet, but there is the big clock.
Yeah, the time clock, yeah. We should talk about the knothole. This was the smaller of the knotholes. There's a bigger one on the south end where the boys sat.
Oh.
And they were segregated at one time.
They were like,
the girls were down here, I think.
there's the South Stadium knothole,
Yeah,
one of the images. You can
that's the
kind of see
boys.
the track there. I don't know
And
what
they
game
were
this was, but there was a big crowd.
Yeah. Well, I think those tickets were super cheap.
Yeah,
So
nickel.
that kids could get in. And
This is a later view, different year. That white track thing is gone. You can see Avery Hall in the background. I don't know
Right.
what those buildings are.
that's Old Nebraska Hall.
Old Nebraska. Oh, okay.
At the very top in the middle with the kind of light colored base. And that was torn down in the early 60s. And that was when Elgin Watt was renamed Nebraska Hall.
Oh, okay. Is one of those stout?
Yes, that one on the right
On the
is what became Stout. It was the Mechanical
And-
Arts Building.
And the field, the practice field is Old Nebraska Field.
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, behind the knothole, the green space, that was their practice field, I'm pretty sure.
Pretty rudimentary compared to Taj
There's a
Mahal
great
up
picture
today.
of the
This is a
practice
great
field.
image, 1950s, apparently by the cars. Is that Richards Hall roof?
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah. Pretty
But
cool.
you can see how Nebraska Field sat in relation to the new stadium. And the grandstand would have been over there, kind of where the goalpost is. And,
Yeah.
and there was another one on this side where the cars are parked.
Yeah.
And then you can see well, that's a good image of the Schulte Field House, and you can just kind of see it in the clock that we, see in the stadium today.
In the previous picture?
Yeah, in the previous one.
Yeah, this picture is pre-Schulte,
Yes.
Yes.
but there's the baseball diamond
And the field.
and the field, 10th Street Viaduct.
Supposedly they had to make a new spur on the railroad around 10th Street, or some kind of spur in regard to the getting into the stadium when they were building, so they could bring all the construction materials
Oh,
at
that
that
makes
time.
All that concrete and
Yeah,
lumber.
so,
the
yeah.
2 million feet of lumber.
Exactly. So maybe more
This
roads
picture too,
and
you could kind
rails,
of date
but-
it because
Yeah.
there's the land has been cleared for Burnett, but Burnett isn't there. It's that white thing kind of in the
Yeah.
lower right-hand corner.
But that was like 20 years, Kim.
Yeah, the columns are there. Not sure when they put those in.
Those are maybe
It's a great picture.
1930s.
Yeah.
About.
Oh,
There
here
she
we go.
is.
Here's the field
Oh.
house.
Here's the beginnings of the field house, Schulte Field House.
Yeah, this is a construction shot,
Construction
isn't it?
shot, yeah. You can see the clock.
Well, you wonder how many construction shots there would be, because according to what I've learned is that, they started it in the 1940s, but then they had to completely shut down all construction during the war. So like in 1942 to 45, maybe even into 46, absolutely no construction.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't get steel, you couldn't get
Right.
materials
It
that all
sat
went
there
to the
kind
war
of half.
effort.
Yeah.
Well, and there weren't any workers,
Yeah, that too.
you
Yes,
know, so
certainly.
everything just kind of sat expectantly.
And I'd like to get more information on Schulte, because, just in relation to the clock, because supposedly that was kind of new, and then he was one of the first people to do the electronic scoreboard when that started. And that's kind of what I'd like to learn more about. What, was it really him, or what started that, and if it's possible to find out more about that.
I remember this field house from when I was in college because I remember that curved corner.
The coolest part.
Yes, and the N on it, and it
Well,
was.
it was UN
Yeah.
instead of NU.
Yeah.
So it was sort of inconsistent that they did that, but I loved those curved walls.
Right, and the brick streets. It's what at one time it was called Avery Avenue.
Yes, that's
And,
what I remember. And
yeah.
the police and parking.
Yep.
The parking police were down on Avery Avenue.
Yep. And now it's like a traffic circle or something.
Yeah.
So here it is, more complete.
Yeah.
K-State has a thing kind of like that when you go to their stadium. Although it's probably covered up now. I haven't been there in years.
Well, and I think they tried to save that clock, and it was just so embedded in that
Yeah.
building they couldn't do it. This is a great, and Mary Ellen knows about this
Yeah.
interior shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there were 3 levels to the Schulte Field House, so that like the bottom level was dirt, middle level was maybe I'm thinking this field where they could do practice, and then at top they had like squash courts, playing squash and that kind of thing.
Was there a
And the-
basement under what we're looking
Yeah,
at
there was
here?
a bit. Yeah, supposedly.
Is that where did the track run through there?
Well, I don't know if the track ran through there or you got to the track under Memorial Stadium through there. And then I know that the locker rooms and stuff were in here. But yeah, here we go. Here are some of the Schulte Fieldhouse locker rooms.
The equipment room.
Equipment room, yeah, there we go.
Look at the helmets.
I
Oh,
love this picture.
There's more helmets.
I know, because they're unboxing helmets. It's just sort of.
Yeah.
And
would've been
those
sort of-
helmets look like they wouldn't protect an egg,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that they would not be very, they almost look,
Leather.
yeah, they look
Ah,
really
yeah.
early, don't
Yeah,
they?
they might have been leather.
Oh, yeah, so here's the indoor track then.
I think it did tie into the field house, the old, what we now call the Mushroom Gardens,
Yeah.
the cinder track that was under there.
And
It just
it-
seems like a very odd place for a track, but
Yeah, well, were you guys ever in Mushroom Gardens?
yeah, 50 years ago.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I think now they use it for, like cooking runzos and pizza during the games.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like this picture. I think this is on the West Stadium.
I've been trying to figure out where this curved staircase
Well,
was.
it's except, well, they put that big addition on the West Stadium, but I remember those stairs. And they emulated that in the design of West Stadium. So if you go by there, it has in the deed the glory is carved there, but there is kind of a curved stairway up into the West Stadium now.
Okay.
Is this, would this be the southwest corner? Because we're looking, or would it be right in the middle?
I think it was in the center.
Aha. Because you walk by now and you're kind of at ground level there. And honestly, as an undergraduate, I stayed on the east side. I don't think I ever paid much attention to the west side.
Oh, you never had to do a class in 501?
No. I can remember avoiding that building.
No. There was a lot of science labs and stuff there.
Yeah, well, that
so-
wouldn't have been my thing.
Yeah, well, it was kind of interesting. So, I don't know. I just think that the stadium is just so iconic, and now they've announced that there's going to be a big redo. They're going to tear down the South Stadium, I guess.
$500
and then-
million, that's
I
kind of
know,
big,
I know.
isn't it?
You know what's interesting to me? We're talking about that new stadium is $450 million. The original stadium was $450,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
and it will be very probably high touch, and I feel like the first stadium really wasn't built with the fan experience in mind.
Well, I just think expectations weren't that high.
Yeah.
You were going to sit outside for 3 hours and watch a bunch of 20-year-old boys pound each other.
Yeah,
And I guess, comfort was maybe not their highest priority.
I do like that when you go into the current stadium with the big East Stadium edition that houses like the brain biology lab and some classrooms and all the sky boxes and all that kind of stuff. And it is nice. I mean,
Yes.
the bathrooms are very nice now
Yeah.
compared
Yeah.
to the ones downstairs that still have, like the horse trough things
Yes.
and do your hands and everything. It is still cool if you go in there and you look up and you see like those medallions on the side of the stadium that were the original, Missouri Valley teams
Yeah.
that we played. So you look up there and you're like, Drake University.
You know that photo we looked at that had the inscription on the northwest corner? You can see the medallion circular things are in place, but the medallions haven't been.
They hadn't glued them up yet.
They hadn't attached them yet, right? And those medallions are interesting because they're schools that Drake and schools that we haven't competed with in almost 100 years.
I know, but you
Yeah.
still, I think Mizzou is up there, and
Yeah.
probably Kansas. And
Yeah, there are some
Oklahoma.
like Big 8 schools, but
Yeah.
there's also some others that are unusual.
Yeah, it is cool. It is a historic, iconic building, and I know that there's controversy about the new project because
Always.
it is expensive. But there's always been controversy about it. I'm sure in the 1920s they were like, well, there's other things. that
Well,
you
Oh,
I think
yeah.
I think it's hard for faculty, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who feel underfunded
Yeah.
and
Rightfully.
especially right now, and yet we're adding this totally different pots of money. but it still makes, I think, faculty question our priorities sometimes.
It's going to be pretty interesting to see how they do that, though, and you know, how they figure it all out. And I mean, I have sat in every single section of the stadium. I've sat on the west side, I've sat on the north side, I've sat in the south stadium, I've sat in the east stadium. Now I'm in the jet stream section of the stadium, but I like going to the games. It's fun. It's a thing. It's always been a family tradition for us.
Well, it's really exhilarating. I don't know how you can not be in the stadium with that many people and not feel the energy and exhilaration.
It is full of energy, that's for sure.
It's fun. Probably the highest energy I have ever experienced was that Hail Mary, that Ron
Kellogg's Hail Mary.
Oh my God.
That was a beautiful day.
It was, and it just, my
and
heart.
the Eric Crouch touchdown.
The touchdown.
Yeah, with the
and the Alex
pass
Henry
from,
kick.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming.
Fun.
We've had a
it was fun.
It was fun. It was a good experience, and I enjoyed it. And I want to remind our viewers that's never too late to live and learn.
Aging Partners has relocated to Victory Park, 600 South 70th Street, just east of the old VA hospital. Follow the signs around the south part of the building complex and enter under the Aging Partners sign on the east side of the facility. The new fitness center is equipped with state-of-the-art cardio and fitness equipment. Caseworkers and resource specialists are available to assist you with a variety of aging issues. Enjoy a hot lunchtime meal and engage with others in a variety of activities. Aging Partners, now at Victory Park.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Julie Masters and welcome to Live and Learn. It is such a great pleasure to have Dr. Mark Gilbert with us today. Dr. Gilbert is an internationally renowned artist, along with an award-winning faculty member from the University of Nebraska, Omaha, and so pleased that he can be with the people of Lincoln. So, Dr. Gilbert, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Julie. No, this is wonderful. I'm delighted to be able to be here and talk to you this morning.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Gilbert, could you share a little bit with our viewers about yourself and then also about your research interests, because you are an academic? Yeah,
no, so I'm originally from, as maybe the viewers can already gather, I'm not originally from Omaha, Nebraska. So I was born in Glasgow, Scotland. I grew up in a house where art was being made all the time. My dad was a professional artist. My mum had been to art school. They'd met at art school. And so it's maybe not surprising that with my dad having a studio and with my mum being an art teacher and so on, that I too ended up going to art school in Glasgow. And so really ended up painting for 10 years, went there for 4 years, worked in relative isolation, but, managing to make a living in Scotland, working on using portraiture as my sort of main medium of choice. And I did that for about 10 years, having exhibitions and so on. But really, it's nearly 30 years ago that my life was to change, because I got asked by a head and neck surgeon in one of the busiest hospitals in London to come and work with him and some of his patients who were undergoing, incredible surgery for head and neck cancer and trauma and facial difference and so on. And so that took me right out of my comfort zone, which is I think is always a good thing for an artist to have to experience. And really that's where the sort of research, I then had to start to address the fact that, slowly start to embrace the fact that my work was research, because it was not something I'd contemplated up till then.
So when you talk about research, and particularly given the medium that you use, how does that relate to research? Tell us, how do you go about your research?
Well, I was sort of, I kind of resisted, sometimes I'd be working as this kind of artist in residence, for instance, in the hospital in London, and then latterly, also then not, after that, subsequently in Omaha. And I would always be the sort of, other people, the academics, the surgeons would be doing the research, and I'd be almost like a kind of guinea pig working on portraits with patients and caregivers and so on. And so the whole notion that my pictures were data was something that I resisted a little bit, but I was still curious about it all. But of course, when you're drawing, it's an act of research. I'm in the Weber Fine Arts building here at UNO, and everything that the students are doing the minute they're putting pencil to paper is in many ways they're trying to make sense of what they're seeing and feeling, and so it's an act of research. So over and above that, I also, for the studies that I've carried out subsequently, I keep incredibly detailed journals. I carry out interviews. I collect as much information as possible, as well as the images themselves, which are which are their own, carry their own narratives and their own information. And then it's a kind of laborious process of analysis, usually with the help of others, who have gotten in, just lots and lots of discussions and lots of reflection, and then seeing what themes emerge out of that. So the work I do is always exploratory. It's rarely, although that starts to feel a bit disingenuous a little bit, because I've been doing it so long. I start to kind of, you can start to have a hunch of what's going to happen, how somebody's going to respond. At the same time, the challenge is to never assume. So I'm quite happy not working with a hypothesis and so on. I'm quite happy just kind of, getting on with it and see what emerges out of the whole process, out of the relationship. So yeah.
Well, I think when you said it's an active research is a pretty powerful descriptor of the work that you do. And I think for the viewers, it would be helpful for them to know that you received one of the highest awards at the university this fall for your research and creative activity. And so certainly a recognition from your peers of the good work that you're doing as a researcher. So Mark, you've talked a little bit about you were sought after by a physician to participate and to do these beautiful paintings, these beautiful images of the patients that they were working with. And, it was a curious kind of side road, so to speak, given your preparation and training. So what inspired you, first of all? And then I think the other thing that might be of interest is, how did you prepare for this interaction?
So as I say, it was kind of accidental. So it really was a case. I knew the surgeon prior to working with him on a kind of social basis, and then it was purely by chance that we bumped into each other on the platform in a railway station in Glasgow,
And so pardon me for just a moment, while you're talking about this, you bumped into him on a platform in Glasgow. I think what might be interesting for our viewers is if we could take a little look at some of the paintings while you're sharing this story.
Sure. And so so it really was, so it wasn't, so the first painting is the first person I worked with, who was one of Ian's patients, and his name was Henry. And so this painting means a great deal to me, because it really is the start of, the kind of almost the rest of my life. But also, again, the notion I was inspired, I wouldn't necessarily use the word inspired, my anxiety levels were through the roof, but again, I was curious to know how this could be done appropriately. I wondered if working with somebody like Henry and with some of the other patients, I felt that I could be like a bull in a china shop, that the paintings, it takes a certain amount of courage at the best of times to have your portrait painted. And I felt that, I assumed, rightly or wrongly, that I might be working with people sometimes during the most traumatic moments of their lives. And again, I had no medical experience, so I was incredibly anxious. But what was amazing is I realized that the relationship that I was able to kind of engender with Henry and with the other patients were really helping us, not just the patient, but helping me to be able to function. And similarly, working with Roland. And again, that notion that potentially I might be illuminating aspects of these people's lives that they felt were, that they felt anxious about or nervous about. And what was amazing is that, so for instance, this picture of Roland in his radiotherapy mask, he'd had a massive operation removing most of one side of his face, the bone structures, the jaw, and so on. And he felt a sense of achievement having got through that surgery, because to remove his tumor. But the radiotherapy was something he found incredibly challenging, and yet he wanted to be painted in the mask. And similarly, this is Henry. So this is this vivid operation picture is also a picture of Henry, who you saw in the first image. And in many ways, it's a portrait of Henry as well. And so it tells an important part of Henry's narrative. And again, what was remarkable is that the patients responded so richly and positively to these images.
Right. So you had these images, and you were in the operating room with the surgeon side by side.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was a challenge. It was a challenge emotionally. It was a challenge artistically. It kind of offered, emotionally, the first few times I was in the operating theatre, I kind of had to hold myself together a little bit. But when you see the head unveiled under those lights and so on, then it creates a whole series of kind of aesthetic values that almost felt at the beginning, almost felt unpaintable. And, so you're always in this position of feeling like you had to do justice to what you were seeing. I immediately felt that sense of privilege of, this was remarkable. I was dealing with some of the most, the strongest visual images any artist could ever hope to deal with. And so there's a huge amount of responsibility there. And again, the anxieties were there in abundance. But again, the patience and the relationships is what I realized was what was allowing me to function.
And it seems that now the current research that you're involved in, it's almost a natural progression because you are now working with healthcare providers that truly survived the pandemic themselves. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, so the pictures I did a series when I returned to Omaha in 2020. I started on this project working with healthcare workers in collaboration with the American Medical Association. And so this is one of the paintings of a nurse who was working in one of the hospitals here in Omaha. And I was working with both local healthcare workers and some from elsewhere in the nation. On pictures like these. What was remarkable about this is that, people have often asked when you're working with people, living with cancer and so on, it must be incredibly emotional. And actually often that's not necessarily the case. It can be often poignant and moving, but rarely do the people I work with get upset and so on. When I was working with the healthcare workers, though, I realized that they were much more at that point, so the pandemic was still on. They were much more emotionally, their emotions were much more on the surface than even with the patients I'd been working with. So often they would break down and in a way that I'd never experienced before. And I think it just testified to the profound uncertainties that they were facing at that point. There was a lot of unknowns at that point. They were anxious about their own health, their own well-being, that of their families, how to treat the patients properly, all the challenges of dealing with end of life at that point, and so on. And so, I'd never ever worked with a cohort of participants in a study whose emotions were so much on the surface. I mean, it was striking.
So we go from your work in terms of healthcare, and Dr. Gilbert, when we had the chance to meet the first time, I learned about the experience that you had in terms of both your parents. And can you talk a little bit about the book that was produced as an outcome of your mom's last days and your father being with her?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what ended up happening, so as I already alluded to, both my parents were sort of in the arts business. My father had drawn and painted my mother hundreds, thousands of times over their 65-year marriage. And so there's for every painting he did tons of drawings of her. I'd sat for him many, many times, so we were always modeling. So drawings like this one were done as a precursor to paintings. Ultimately, what ended up happening was round about 2011, my mum was diagnosed with dementia. When she was sort of in her mid-80s. My dad, continued to draw and paint her even as he cared for her at home in Glasgow. And so, as he'd done always. And ultimately what ended up happening was in 2016, my mum had been living with dementia, with Alzheimer's disease for about 5 years. And ultimately what happened was that she had a massive stroke from which we were told she wasn't going to recover. And so as my dad kept vigil by her bedside for what would be the final week of her life, he carried out a series of drawings. And so I wasn't there at that time, so for me, it was an incredibly traumatic time. And at the same time, these drawings, I couldn't believe it when I heard that he was doing these drawings. But as a son, these drawings allow me to, and anybody else who sees them, allows the viewer to be able to build a picture of what happened that week. And as a researcher who's kind of spent the last 30 years working in this field, they've kind of, they've taught me more about this kind of, we often use the phrase, the healing power of art, and sometimes I'm not even sure what that means. But it's almost like these drawings have forced me to come from behind the easel. I feel when I look at the drawings, I'm incredibly grateful to have them, to see them. I'm incredibly grateful that he did them. but they allow me, they represent in many ways one of the most traumatic moments of my life, and I'm incredibly grateful to have them.
It's when you talk about the healing power of art, it would seem that the totality of your career has really focused on healing of patients who are having surgery, to healing of your dad and perhaps even your mom in a different way. So, Dr. Gilbert, we are so grateful that you've taken the time to, I think, share of your life and your work and how powerful that is. And art really is a form of research, and certainly reflected in what you've been able to accomplish. So as we come to the end, tell us, what gives you hope? What gives you joy in terms of your work?
I feel incredibly fortunate to do the work that I do. I care passionately about the work I've done in a research capacity. And so it's I keep on using the word privilege. It's been a privilege to work with the people I've worked with. And it's also a privilege to be able to then work with the students and be able to allow them to, and learn from them, frankly, as they're doing their own research, and I'm able to do it. Omaha has been very, very kind to me over the years. And I'm delighted to be here, and I'm able to, I'm incredibly fortunate that I'm able to work with, research in, and teach the things that nourish me, and for that, and again, with all the uncertainty that brings, art is an incredibly vulnerable practice at the best of times for student, for artist, for teacher, for model. So there's uncertainties and vulnerabilities there, but again, you embrace those, you come to terms with those, and you actively seek that uncertainty, and it's just lovely to be able to watch the students, start their own journey in that respect.
And I would suspect your parents had that same experience with you as they watched you flourish and grow in terms of your own career. Well, Dr. Gilbert, we are so grateful that you would have given your time to us today to talk about your work. And I think on behalf of the people living in the Lincoln area and anyone who will be able to see this on YouTube, their thanks to you as well for your good work. So, Mark, thank you so much. And to our viewers, remember, it's never too late to live and learn.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Live and Learn. I am your host, Jerry Renaud. We have a very interesting topic today. It's about artificial intelligence, or AI, as most people are calling it. It has been around, actually, for several years. It continues to develop, and now it's sort of becoming commercially acceptable, and you're able to do some things with phones. And it's been big in education for a while, people using it. It's been big in the health industry, certainly in science. But in communication, there are some interesting things that are going along with it, and we want to talk about that today, and how you as a consumer can perhaps be a little bit more aware of some of these things. Here to talk to us about that is the Dean of the College of Journalism and Mass Communications at the University of Nebraska. It is Dr. Shari Veil. Shari, thanks for being with us today. I know you're busy, so thanks for taking the time out to do this. Before we jump into AI, there's a couple of things that I always love to promote my alma mater. You recently won an award. You were selected as the Outstanding Educator from the National Communication Association Public Relations Division. That is really a great honor. And I know it's one you're proud of, but I think it also reflects on the college and really the great faculty that you have there.
Thank you. It's lovely, very surprising. I feel like I'm far too young to be getting a Lifetime Achievement Award, but it was great to get some recognition from what is my academic home division, especially now when I spend so much time focusing on the entire college and all of the programs there. So it was really a wonderful honor.
Yeah. Congratulations. I think it's
you.
great. Another one, this is really wonderful as well. One of the really wonderful alums of the college, Jane Olson, made a $2 million commitment to the college to fund an endowed dean's position. Not only a great thing for you and always helpful in that regard, but it's also going to go to help the students.
Absolutely. And Jane has had an incredible life journey. Traveling all over the world, collecting stories about human rights concerns, and she really wanted the funds to go into helping the college and giving students those experiences. So the funds coming off of that gift will actually go toward our experience lab, and our students will be able to get hands-on learning experience in the college.
Yeah, and that's great that, that they get a chance to do that and actually make a little money at the same time.
Indeed.
Which is always helpful. Okay, let's talk about AI. Such an interesting subject, and so many different areas and things that we can talk about, but we want to sort of concentrate on the journalism side. You know,
Sure.
I mentioned on the health side, it is really doing some wonderful things. Science as well, as they're able to feed formulas into a computer and to be able to give that information. We have a little a definition sort of for AI. If we could maybe toss that up there, here we go. It's the ability of a digital computer or computer-controlled robot to perform tasks commonly associated with intelligent beings. We should put that in quote. The term is frequently applied to the project of developing systems endowed with the intellectual process characteristic of humans, such as the ability to reason, discover meaning, generalize, learn from past experience. So this is a computer that can grow like a human being and perhaps make decisions and do some of that. You have a new class actually in AI. Tell us a little bit about the kinds of things that are happening in that class.
Sure. So the class is being taught by Professor Matt Waite and works with students really to test it out, to experiment with it. I mean, we all came back from the holiday break this last year about, oh, ChatGTP, and students are going to be cheating, and just all the essays will be written by ChatGTP. And, well, yeah, it turns out some pretty good answers, but it's not original information. It's not personal reporting, and that's really what they're learning to do now is, what can you use AI for? How can that actually help you move a little bit farther down into an investigation, because you don't have to do things that have already been done. You don't have to go back through the history in quite the same level. As long as you are giving it proper instructions, it can actually pull some really impressive information and tell a fairly decent story.
Yeah, there's one of the theories is that that AI can be used to write the kinds of stories that are just basic information. You know, here's the basic facts of a traffic accident, or here's the basic facts of something that happened that took place, and it should be able to free up the reporter then to be able to work on other kinds of things or more in-depth kinds of reporting. You know, the other theory is that it will take jobs away from journalists. How do you see that?
You know, I honestly think it's a little bit of both, because there's an evolution of our industries. Every time technology evolves, so too must our industries. So too must our university, in order to train students, to prepare them for where the industry is going. I think specifically of one of our fastest growing majors right now, sports media and communication. So the number of stories that are written about basic statistics from a game is pretty considerable.
Yeah.
Do we really need a journalist churning that out with those statistics? I mean, I look at the Nebraskan Sports Writers of the Year this last year, Evan Brand and Stu Pospisil, both alums of our college. They didn't get those awards, they didn't get that recognition because they were really good at writing about sports statistics, right? That information. There are other things that we can look at too. So one of our biggest employers of our sports media students is Huddle.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at what they do with AI. They use an unmanned camera to be able to follow a game, track the statistics of that game, and provide those stats out to the coach. What if we took that step in between and then those stats were provided to another AI service that then writes that story?
Right.
That would allow our journalists to go out and do more of investigative reporting.
Right.
Another alum of ours, Paula Levine, she just won the Dan Jenkins Medal.
Right.
For investigative journalism in sports. And I think maybe if we had been able to focus a little more on investigative reporting, we might have such big headlines about issues, because we would hopefully would have caught them sooner.
Do you think AI is ever going to develop to the point where it can do some interpretation? Because that's what's sort of interesting about, if we stay on sports, you know, the sports writers sort of analyze the game and they give grades and they give those kinds of things. Is AI going to move into the interpretation part of it? I mean, that's what sort of scares me a little.
Well, it can. I mean, you can train a computer, you can train them to be able to make predictions based on the information that's there. But another class that Matt Waite teaches is specifically around sports data and analytics. Right. And he had an entire class where they all use different models in order to predict who would win the Final Four. And not a single one of them were correct. So actually one of them who came very close and was in the lead for the longest time built the model off of which mascots were more likely to beat up the other mascot.
Oh my goodness.
So you can make those plans based on defense, offense, all of that. Offense, and sometimes it's the heart, and that's something that a computer can't necessarily understand.
Right. Part of communication also is the public relations part of it, and also the advertising part of it. And advertising certainly has, its goal is to try to convince the viewer, the reader, whoever it is, to buy this product or vote for a candidate or whatever it ends up being. There's always been sort of this, you push the envelope about what you can do. Is AI going to be something that we're going to have to be concerned about in terms of advertising and public relations?
I think advertising and public relations from the promotional standpoint, less so, because we have our own ethics in those industries that we must follow and abide by. It's what gets shared online that is going to be the bigger concern. I mean, right now, students in Anderson Hall can sit down and do a newscast and run it through AI and have it be a cartoon fox giving the news.
Right.
You can also do that with other humans, where the words you are saying are coming out of their mouth and their voice. That's the scary part about AI. So I'm less concerned about it actually going out on the advertising PR side of things and more about potential political manipulation, PACs and others who are not always following with the expectations of truth.
Yeah, that's the sort of the difference is journalism has a code for the most part. True journalism, this we're only going to put the information that we know of, and we're not going to manipulate quotes, and we're not going to change things around. But it's the people that are not really considered to be journalists. They are trying to push a candidate, or they are trying to push a product, or whatever it is, and they don't have to follow those kinds of ethical guidelines. And the real concern is how does the audience know the difference?
It's really hard. I mean, you look at some of the videos that are coming out right now that are deep fakes, you can't tell that it's been created. And it's more of thinking of those who are actors, particularly targeting different movements within a country. I just came back from the International Risk and Crisis Communication Conference in Sweden and had a whole report from the Swedish Psychological Defense Center on how they are tracking terrorists who are creating videos, creating posts that are very specifically targeting different concerns within the country. And it's really hard to tell what's real and what's false, to the point that they have had people out protesting in the street based on false social media posts and videos.
Do we need, or is it even possible to create some sort of legal precedent for how people are going to do these things? Because you really can take somebody and put words in their mouth, which is kind of scary.
Indeed, and actually one of our big path-through opportunities for students is that we share about 350 alumni with the College of Law. Folks who come in, study journalism, First Amendment, copyright infringement. There will be plenty of opportunity there. I expect it will come down to litigation, and that's how we'll start getting some policy set more clearly.
Right. So where do we go from here with AI? I mean, where is your prediction as we look down the road? And again, advice to people when they see something out there that doesn't seem quite right. What should they do?
Look for additional sources. That's what we focus on in all aspects of information literacy. Relying on a single source isn't going to get you very far, or it'll get you really far down the wrong path.
Right.
So making sure that you are looking at multiple sources of information, that you are checking those sources. If you think of where we've evolved with research studies, for example, if you're going to look at statistics in a research study, you're also going to look at that margin of error. right? What is that
Right.
line underneath? Make sure that you're getting that information in journalistic reporting as well. What is the source, where it's coming from, who might be manipulating that source? And I think the biggest challenge is going to be for those who are AP photo editors, that they're understanding what is coming to them and making sure that that's represents a true opportunity, because then you have to send that out, and there are so many other news organizations that could then pick up that story, pick up that photo, pick up that video, and share it widely. I mean, we have to watch for it on social media, but journalists are going to have to watch for it all ends of the organization to make sure that we're providing the right information back out to the public.
Yeah, I've started to see the ads on the phones now where you can so easily manipulate a photo and make somebody smile or put them in a different place. That's going to be a challenge for editors to know, what is that a real photo or is that been manipulated?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the challenge for all of us as we are getting information. Is it real? Is it accurate? And if we're questioning everything, it becomes really hard to trust a source.
It does. Well, it'll be interesting as we move down the path. Shari, thanks for being with us today. We really appreciate it. Know you're busy, so thanks for taking some time to come talk to us about a really important subject.
Thank you, Jerry.
And thanks to all of you for tuning in. I am your host, Shari Veil. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you stay safe, stay healthy, and remember, it's never too late to live and learn.